Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. You're watching another edition of Break the Fake, where we debunk fake news and combat false narratives. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and let's get rolling. 3 years into Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the UN managed to turn a simple truth, Russia is the aggressor, into a diplomatic mess. Europe pushed a resolution demanding that Moscow withdraw its troops. The United States tried to introduce its own version, notably avoiding the words Russian aggression. Ukraine and its allies refused to let that slide, and the result? The US ended up voting against the European-backed resolution right alongside Russia. Not a great look. The vote breakdown: 93 countries, including most of the G7, minus the United States, backed the resolution condemning Russia. The US joined Russia, North Korea, and Belarus among the 18 who opposed it. Meanwhile, 65 countries, including India, China, and Brazil, abstained, sticking to their usual strategy of neutrality. Now, let's be fair. Washington did propose its own resolution, aiming for a broader call to end the war, but when it was amended to actually mention Russia's invasion, the US abstained from doing so. Absolutely frustrating. But here's the real deal. All this diplomatic maneuvering distracts from the core fact, namely that Russia is the aggressor. While the world argues over phrasing, Moscow keeps committing war crimes, occupying Ukrainian territory, and hoping everyone just kinda get tired of talking about it. At the end of the day, there's no room for mixed signals. The message should be simple. Russia invaded Ukraine and it must be condemned. Anything less only helps the Kremlin. Lavrov at it again. Moscow's favorite diplomat/hostage negotiator, telling the world that Russia is very open to peace talks. Of course, there's a small catch. Peace can only come under conditions that fully satisfy Russia, which in diplomatic terms means we'll stop bombing you as soon as you agree to give up everything we demand. During his Turkish getaway, Lavrov generously shared some additional pearls of Kremlin wisdom. Apparently, Russia and the US will have some full-fledged diplomatic contacts this week. How exciting. Nothing says strong independent superpower like begging Washington to unfreeze embassy bank accounts so Russian diplomats can pay their electricity bill.
Президент четко сказал, что мы готовы вести переговоры и с Украиной, и с Европой, с любыми представителями, которые в духе доброй воли хотели бы помогать достичь мира, но боевые действия мы прекратим только когда эти переговоры дадут твердый, устойчивый результат, устраивающий Российскую Федерацию. И, безусловно, реалии на земле должны учитываться.
But the real highlight? Russia won't accept a simple freezing of the conflict because they've tried that before and surprise, didn't work. Yeah, the country that spent years lying about frozen conflicts suddenly thinks ceasefire are a bad idea. You see, Russia doesn't want peace. It wants an ironclad agreement that ensures Ukraine will never join NATO. After all, the Kremlin has always respected international agreements, right? Just ask Georgia, Moldova, or, well, Ukraine in 2014. So, here's the deal. Russia is ready for peace as soon as everyone else agrees to pretend that Russia won. Sounds fair, right? Now it turns out that war doesn't just stay on the battlefield, especially when the battlefield is full of Russian soldiers with a taste for violence and a free pass from the Kremlin. More than 750 cases of murder, assault, and other crimes committed by Russian war veterans back home prove that Moscow isn't just exporting chaos abroad, it is bringing it right back to its own doorstep. Now, who could have guessed when you take men with criminal records, give them guns, tell them that killing is not only allowed but rewarded, and then drop them back into civilian life? Well, let's just say they don't all start flower shops. The same government that unleashed them on Ukraine is now shocked that they're continuing their rampage at home. Of course, Russian officials will tell you that these men are heroes. Unlike those pesky Ukrainians fighting to protect their homes, Russian soldiers are doing it for something far nobler: money. Now, when a paycheck stops, some of them just keep doing what they do best. After all, if murder and destruction were patriotic last month, why stop now? But here's the thing about unleashing evil. it doesn't really stay under control. The same brutality Russia exports is now seeping back into its streets, because when you raise a monster, one day it comes home. Another day, another Kremlin propaganda meltdown. This time, Solovey's circus is working overtime to convince Ukrainians that they are alone in the world. The latest trick? A history lesson straight from the twisted minds of Russian state television. According to one of Solovey's resident propagandists, Dmitry Kulikov, Ukraine should take a lesson from Poland in 1939. His brilliant take? Well, back then, the UK didn't exactly rush to Poland's rescue, so why should Ukraine expect any different? Subtle, isn't it? The message is clear. Give up now because no one will come.
Годовщина, они там все санкции будут принимать. Так вот это содружество, Новая Зеландия, Австралия, оно у них уже утро. Они уже выпустили, что они уже нас санкционируют. Австралия, Новая Зеландия. К бабке не ходи, значит, будет Великобритания и Канада. И все это будет отдельный британский пакет санкций. Да? Вот. Но вернусь к адекватности и неадекватности. Это неадекватное полагание и неадекватные потуги. А значит, история заставит их заплатить за это по самому большому счету. И Зеленский, который сегодня надувает щеки и посылает Трампа, рассчитывая на то, что у него спина и крыша прикрыта Великобританией. Ну пусть поедет к полякам и спросит, как все было в 1939 году с британской крышей. И не удивляется потом. Но, наверное, никто ему это не передаст, а он не поймет. Но пока он считает, что он опирается на британскую крышу и может посылать на 3 буквы Трампа.
Now there's just one little problem. Who exactly is Russia in this analogy? Because the last time Poland faced such a betrayal, the invaders were Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. So Kulikov admitting that Russia is playing the role of the aggressor, did someone forget to edit his script? Now, of course, the entire performance is just another act in the Kremlin's psychological warfare campaign, designed to make Ukrainians feel isolated, abandoned, and helpless. But there is a key difference between 1939 and today. Back then, Poland had no weapons, no real support. Ukraine, on the other hand, has been holding the line for 2 years, pushing back an army that thought it could take Kyiv in just 3 days. So if anyone should be rethinking their historical parallels, it's not Zelensky. It's the guys in Moscow still trying to make 1945 their personality. Now there's a lot of confusion around the rare earth minerals deal right now, with different narratives flying around. Some critics claim it's the United States shaking Ukraine down for its resources. Others hail it as some 4D chess move devised by Donald Trump. But before we all spiral into conspiracy theories, let's break down what's actually happening, who's proposed what, and why it matters, and where things stand now. First off, this wasn't Trump's idea. This was Zelensky's. Back in the fall of 2024, as part of his victory plan, Zelensky proposed giving the United States access to Ukraine's critical minerals in exchange for continued military support and security guarantees. Makes sense. Ukraine needs protection, and the United States needs a stable, non-China controlled supply of rare earth elements. Now let's take a second to appreciate why rare earth minerals matter. These aren't just fancy rocks, they are the backbone of modern military and tech infrastructure. Enter Ukraine, a country sitting on some of the largest untapped rare earth reserves in Europe. With Ukraine fighting for its future and Western countries looking for ways to cut dependence on China, Zelensky saw an opportunity. Turn these resources into geopolitical insurance. Remember how the EU got stuck in an abusive relationship with Russian gas? Now imagine if the US become reliant on Ukrainian natural resources. Suddenly, defending Ukraine wouldn't just be about protecting democracy, it would be about protecting American corporate interests. So the deal in and of itself isn't the problem, it's the fine print. Both sides want this partnership. Ukraine sees it as a way to lock in long-term Western support, and the US sees it as a way to secure critical minerals. The sticking point now is figuring out how to structure it fairly. And with that, we conclude this edition of Break the Fake. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.